Okay, hello and welcome back to another episode of the Longhouse. That intro was a bit of some red meat for you Norwegians in the chat, or for those of you watching the VOD. I'm probably gonna get hit by a copyright claim for that, but it's worth it. This show is a show about politics, culture, philosophy, art, etc., all with a true right and now officially Nordic slant. With me today, I have, as always so far, Luddic Path. Welcome.
How do you do? Yeah, Norwegian reactionary back again to co-host. So excited to have two new guests on to talk about media.
Yes, I think this is going to be a fun one. And we'll try to expand a bit. It's been quite a bit of Norway-centric content, obviously, since the start. But now we have the chance to expand a little bit more. And that's because with us we also have Leo Borealis from Sweden. Welcome, sir.
Good evening.
Good evening. Would you like to tell the audience a little bit about yourself, or are you comfortable being the mysterious crow?
Well, I don't really know what there is to say. I'm the only based Swede you could find on this short notice. So, yeah, that's about it for now.
Okay. And also joining us from Finland, we have Birkarl. Birkarl? Is that the correct way to say it?
In Finnish, it would be Birkarl or Pirkkalainen, but I think the Swedish pronunciation would be Birkarl, or something like that. It would be spelled differently.
I probably can't say that anyway.
Sure.
But yes.
Anyway, a Finn with an accent from the U.S. South from childhood.
Yeah, we had to talk a bit about whether we're going to accept you because of that, but you're still here, so you just got to prove yourself.
So far.
Yes. Also coming in from the sidelines with a steel chair, Emil from Denmark. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. It's a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. You're back from the first episode we did, if I remember correctly.
Indeed.
Yes. So, before we started the stream, we were just chatting a bit about random current events. And we were talking about things like Ukraine, of course. It's been interesting watching the media do its thing on both sides, as well as the I don't know what to say, the reaction from normal people. We talked a bit about normies and how they're dealing with the potential of a conflict, I suppose. Although I would say that's highly unlikely. I was just about to tell the others before the stream started that I was sitting during lunch today talking to some coworkers about these things, and they were painting, as the media does, Putin as the evil mustache man insertion, as he's been cast in the Boomer Truth regime, and without any thought or consideration for the Russian side of things, purely in a geopolitical sense, of course. I'm not necessarily supporting Putin and everything here, but it's important to also remember that they want different things than us. And it's also important to remember that, and that's something I told them, that with this potential conflict, Putin has he's got a much bigger window than everyone else. Putin has been in power for, off the top of my head, 30 years?
Yeah, something like since the 2000s, I think.
Yeah, okay, 20 years. 20, coming up on 25 maybe.
Yeah.
And he's probably got quite a few years left. And he's playing with that sort of time window, while Macron and someone like Biden is playing with a 2-year, 1-year window, and they need a W. And so it's quite funny to see scenes like I've pictured here with Macron being placed at the end of the table.
Like a scolded child.
I mean,
Yes.
is it a meme if it's just a picture?
I
It's
think,
a picture.
what's the saying? Life imitates art.
Yeah, I think the thing going around about this is that Putin himself personally is actually really scared of COVID, of getting it himself. So I don't know if that's true, but
I can understand that his age, regardless of what people, say about COVID, and in these circles, if you get it and you're unlucky, it doesn't matter if you're Putin or if you're, some peasant. If you happen to be vulnerable to it.
When I look at this,
Putin's penchant for mind games. I mean, you all probably
That too.
remember. He always brought his dog when he was meeting Angela Merkel, who is pathologically afraid of dogs.
Yeah, I
right.
remember seeing that. That was hilarious.
So I think that plays into like you talked about the normies who look at Putin. I feel like this plays into their sort of normie perception of evil, if that makes sense. Because guys like Putin and Lukashenko, they are like very old school, and they will have like a very old school concept of aesthetics and power, to the point where they will do this stuff, and they're always going to be dressed nicely. They're going to use like large buildings and have themselves displayed in a certain way that's completely contrary to the Western conception of power. Say with someone like Obama or William Fentz or something, where they try to make them look as innocuous as possible, and that means that they're the good guys.
Yes, these guys are certainly more on the lion side than the fox side that you find a lot of our leaders. Okay, we'll probably get back to some of this later, because we're gonna touch on media, and we're probably gonna end up having to touch on NATO, and then we're back at it. So the other thing we were laughing about was this meme about the Chinese ski jump with the is that a nuclear reactor like exhaust thing in the background?
I think it's a steel mill cooling tower.
Ah, okay.
It's in the jump ramp is out in an old industrial zone, and they are defunct steel mills. So if you have a larger expanded picture taken more from the air, you can see it's like a bunch of those cooling towers.
But it does look like a stereotypical nuclear plant.
Yes. And then, of course, contrasted with the was it Pennsylvania, Beer Carl? The Anywhere USA photo, the strip mall with the McDonald's and the Exxon Mobil. So this is which way, Western man? This is your two choices, according to...
You have the manufacturing economy there on the right and the service economy on the left.
Yes.
You can pick your poison.
Hopefully we, as Nordics hiding here up in the mountains, are able to escape both of these in some fashion with our lives. Hopefully, we'll see.
Some sort of third position, perhaps.
Yes, you may say that. Welcome everyone in the chat. We're just chatting a bit the first 10 minutes here to let you all trickle in, but I think I see a lot of a lot of returning names. Mongolian Doggerland, Vingol from... Was Vingol on the last stream or the one before that? I think the last one was Freedom, so the one before that, I think
He
we
was
had
on the
Vingol
tech stream.
The tech stream, right. Nordanon, welcome back. Ave, Judge Caligula Bushman. Caligula, sorry. Okay, so, yes, Vingol, that's the flattest ski jump ever. I mean, for us Nords, it's probably pitiful anyway. Let's get into some of the things we want to talk about. Now, this was called the... Readjust here. This was called the Nordic media stream. And that's kind of why I wanted to, and it's because I kind of wanted to talk with other Scandinavians or Nords about the sort of landscape of their media and compare and contrast the differences between us. Sort of as a fun exercise, but also maybe it'll help us, understand the differences and the similarities in our culture a bit as well. Of course, with the knowledge of the reactionary right-wing thoughts that we probably all have touched on. I'm certain that the phenomenon of the cathedral is something that's going to be brought up tonight, at least when we're talking about Norway. It's almost painful to not notice it. So what I have first on the agenda is that we'd like to do a general overview of sort of the mainstream media. And for the most part, that's going to be newspapers. There might be some TV channels, etc. And I've pulled from a hat in which order we're going to do this. So first up, I think we're going to head over to Finland and talk with Burkarl about the Finnish media. Would you want me to pull up the grid, Burkarl?
Yeah, the grid. Well, it wasn't my idea, so I kind of hashed out last minute. But
yeah, sure. You can go off. I'll just mute for a moment, and you can do your thing.
Before the grid is brought up, I'd just like to generalize. You said the focus would be on print, maybe, which is probably uncommon. I think it's for the international stage, but in the Nordics, I think in Finland especially, and Sweden, but generally the paper newspapers are subsidized very heavily. So even though they, at least in Finland, the biggest newspapers only get 20 to 30% return on their selling subscriptions to the physical paper. And the rest is subsidy and investment. So that's...
we have something similar too, don't we, Ludwig?
Yes, but yeah, we'll get to that when we do the overview on the Norwegian media. But we have like the press support, and it was a big thing, especially when the internet became very widely used, and people just realized that it was kind of over for the regular kind of paper media, unless it was subsidized. And apparently there was a government consensus that it would be better to support them. So you have both these direct subsidies in terms of they just give them a certain sum each year, and you get indirect subsidies in terms of tax breaks.
Yes, but it's also interesting to note that, Burkarl, you said that the focus is probably on paper more than TV, and I will agree to some extent, at least culturally, that in Norway, the direct, quote unquote, cultural impact of papers is much larger than TV. TV is a lot more, I guess, subversive with the Americanisms. I don't know if that's the same in the other countries.
Yeah, in the TV came to Finland actually from the Soviet Union. So it was a plan from the Kremlin that, introduce them to this new technology and will, influence their culture to join the join the glorious Soviet Union, but instead, I think the top 3 countries for American programming during the Cold War were Ireland, Iceland, and Finland. So that didn't work out for them. But yeah, so the Finnish press landscape, the 2 biggest media houses are Sanoma and Alma Media, or if I were to pronounce in an American accent, Sanoma and Alma Media.
Alma.
A-L, yeah, it's from the, like Alma Mater. It's Alma Media.
Right.
And Sanoma, especially, is mostly owned by a foundation, the Erkko Foundation, and it was founded in the beginning of the 20th century. The biggest newspaper, Helsingin Sanomat, and it's still the biggest paper. And to get an idea of what they are like, in the beginning of in the 1920s, 30s, when Finland became independent, they were basically the mouthpiece of the Progressive Party, edistyspuolue. And these were not progressives. Well, I guess they are still progressives today, of course, but back in those days, it was strictly classical liberalism, very strictly classical liberalism. So, yeah, that's progressivism then and progressivism now. And Elias Erkko, especially, right after the guns went quiet on the Finnish front after the war, directly basically admitted later to having CIA connections. And I don't see a reason why those have ended, honestly, looking at the newspaper these days.
Right. They might not be as open, but they're certainly there, probably.
Yeah, I see no doubt. So that
which one is this? The Alpha? Was that the one?
No, Helsingin Sanomat, Helsinki Times, HS.
There it is. Okay, yeah. So for those of you watching, Ludwig was kind enough to come up with this political compass of sorts of schlock versus informative, and of course the based and cringe axes. So here we have placed various outlets and TV channels on the scale. This is obviously a purely subjective scale.
Yeah, I made this, and I would say it's purely subjective. And honestly, there's a lot of things in here which I would say, a lot of these media houses would be in the same general area on this chart, but they have a lot of differences in their connections to the outside world and within Finland itself as well. So, for example, the green dot UMV US, they are 2 sort of conservative web outlets, but one is very, let's just say the first social media they list is VK. So it's pretty Russophile, whereas Uusi Suomi US.
How about we go through? Let's just take it from the top, and we'll go.
Sure.
Go one by one. Is that fine?
Yeah, that's fine.
But do you want to talk a bit first, because I know you mentioned some of it, and we're probably going to get back to it on a more like Finland-oriented stream. But Finland is a bit of an outlier, being this close to Russia and
yes.
and the history of your nations as well. So it's got a bit of a different, being Russia or sort of more Russia leaning isn't necessarily out of character.
No, it's, let's say 90% of Finnish society is inwardly, in their heart, very hostile to Russia, but the lingering of the simple necessities of living by large states makes it so that you have to say one thing and think another. as we do on YouTube with,
Of course.
our euphemisms with mid-century and all that.
I'll just highlight real quickly here because he kindly did so to me whenever I was in the chat of his streams. The Prudentialist in the chat just got here. If you don't follow him already, you should give him a follow. I think he just recently hit 5,000 subscribers. And he's going to probably do some very interesting stuff going forward. If you haven't watched him yet, he has a huge backlog of very good international politics or global politics videos. Richard Norheimer is asking a question in the chat. If you save it for once we get later into the stream, we'll be more sort of open to taking stuff off the cuff from the chat. Right now we have a bit of a strict programming because we have a lot of nations to get through. So I'm just going to blow past any questions for now. Sorry, keep going. Let's talk about the TS. I can't even say it.
Turku, or you can just say Åbo, since that's the
Åbo,
Swedish
okay.
name. Yeah, but the Turun Sanomat or Åbo Times, it's pretty much a regional paper. I'd say everything except Aamulehti, which is literally translated morning newspaper, from Tampere, which is a part of the Alma Media group. That is the second media house, and all the rest of them, Turku Times, KS Keski-Suomalainen, KV Kaleva, IK Ilkka, KL. Well, that's they're regional newspapers that are pretty incestuous in their ownership. It crisscrosses a lot, and the bigger media houses have been basically consolidating for them for the last 30 years, ever since basically the media westernized, the Cold War ended. So it was a thing that kept up. The Soviets did censor what you could say, but the general media landscape, which was much more localized in Finland back then. It was, the local newspaper maybe got censored, but at least it was actual local newspaper.
Yeah, because the things they talked about didn't really have to be censored as long as they talked about local stuff, I imagine.
Yeah, and everything non-domestic then had to be toned down. But anyway, yes. So Sanoma, Helsinki Times, and Aamulehti or Alma Media Group are the two big houses, and the main financial newspaper, Kauppalehti, is part of Alma Media.
Right.
And the two tabloids there, IS and IL. The IL is part of Alma Media, and IS, which is the biggest online publication, is part of the Sanoma group.
That's the shitty ones, am I right? They're on the schlock side, I see on the graph there.
Yeah, they're tabloids, so default schlock.
Yeah.
And
but I see you've placed most of these in the cringe category. Is there any reason for that, or is it just standard?
Yes, because it's just standard liberal newspapers. The reason they aren't in the schlock category is because they do actually, go and locally talk to people. They're not international media. Helsingin Sanomat, of course, is, but the rest of them are not international in almost any way. So they actually do some interesting things on the ground. Not that it's worth paying for them for that, but anyway.
Right. Do you want to move on to
yes.
TV?
TV, there's Yleisradio, or the state broadcaster. Pretty much what you would expect. And then there's MTV3. It doesn't have anything to do with the American MTV. It comes from Mainos Televisio, meaning advertisement TV, meaning it was the first commercial. commercial channel, and 3 because it was on slot 3 since the first 2 channels were for the public broadcaster.
I'll just real quickly ask, that's true for everyone here in the Nordics, that you have like a, because we have that in Norway as well. You have the state broadcasting, and then you have the, the second one that was the first one when they finally got like a non-state broadcasting TV channel. Is that the same in Sweden and in Denmark as well, Emil?
Yeah, it's the same here in Sweden. The first 2 channels are the state broadcaster, and then the commercial ones come after that.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like the same here. We have the 2 big ones, the state-owned ones is TV2 and then DR, which is Denmark's Radio, which basically has several different channels and different like sub-outlets, so to speak, that are connected to them. So it sounds like it's the same, yes.
Okay, go on, Berkal. I just wanted to confirm that we're all working from the same...
Yes, and I would add that MTV3 these days, it used to be owned by Alma Media back in the old days, until it was sold to first a Swedish Bonnier, and now it's owned by Telia, which is a company owned by the Swedish state. So you get
by Swedes once again, huh?
Yeah, we get our own state broadcasting, and then a company that is Swedish state broadcasting, and they own Sub as well, which is funnily, I couldn't think of anything else to write there describing it, just Friends reruns forever. And Channel 4 is basically Helsingin Sanomat television. And the last one here, Alpha TV, it's pretty funny, the name, but actually the conglomerate that owns it is a Pentecostal evangelical organization running throughout the Commonwealth of Independent States, the successor organization to the Soviet Union. And
that's interesting.
Yeah, it's very interesting. They came up in, I should have written down what year they started. It was in the last 10 years that they started up. But basically this is a media conglomerate of Pentecostals, and they do a lot of evangelizing all across the former Soviet Union, especially to the minority groups. And they basically had enough capital to break through the Finnish sphere and get something even vaguely conservative onto television, something that says maybe these pride parades aren't, the best thing ever. Just, tone it down a bit, wear suits maybe.
Right. Okay. So it's we're sort of touching on standard conservatism, not even counter jihad here. It's
no.
Imagine if the situation was reversed, kind of argumentation.
There's some of that, but mostly it's just because it's in the very strictly Pentecostal frame, which is odd since it's not, Pentecostalism isn't really that big in Finland, but it's a thing, and it came up in the...
So sort of in reality, not a lot of people watch this channel.
Yeah, they market themselves as a channel for over 40s, and that's why boomerism. But
right.
And that is an actual demographic, so this is, I'd say, an actual market phenomenon. But I think the elite could easily just see that this is a passing thing, and they just let it be for now, and it makes for a good target,
yes,
to complain about.
You've also been described as the coolest Finn in the sauna by Matteo Pellegrino. Carl?
Yes, indeed. Matteo is a friend who I've talked to a lot.
Uh-huh. Okay, and then you have something called...
I just labeled it miscellaneous.
It's miscellaneous. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, because
it's grainy, the photo.
Now we get to basically the alt media. So this is mostly web publications. All of it, all of the rest of the things. So there's
Okay, all of this is alt media, right?
yeah,
Well, looking at your graph, I think we can skip the miscellaneous stuff.
yeah. We can.
And I'm interested in knowing more about the green and the red ones because of where you placed them, really.
Yeah. Well, of course, it reads on the red. You see it's very much the white gnat sphere, as I labeled it, and it's because there's, due to the history of Finland, any right-wing movement, there is no, being a nation under the king of a nation neighboring you for the longest time, one or the other on both sides. It doesn't lend itself to that clear hierarchical structure of monarchy as a reaction. It
Right,
lends
and
itself
just a point of history here, Finland during the fun times of the mid-century was a can I say the word?
co-belligerent. It's the official line the state
Okay.
takes. But,
Right.
I mean, we
It
didn't
was
sign the
certainly a fascist-inspired system, if nothing else.
No, I wouldn't say so. Yes,
really?
it was more authoritarian, but honestly, there were members of the special people who served in the Finnish armed forces and actually got the Iron Cross of the mid-century Germans awarded to them because they didn't know they were of that group. But
I see.
It's quite interesting, actually. But yeah, that's history. And
But my point here is anyway that has that sort of has that destroyed any semblance of these kind of thoughts?
definitely not.
Okay. So you would say
course-
it's stronger in Finland than, say, in Sweden or Norway?
Yes, I would say so. It's simmering very quietly, but I would say there never is the libertarian ideal will never happen in Finland. It's completely antithetical. It's too collectivist.
Of course. And about the green ones, this is the Russophile ownership. Was that the one you were talking about earlier?
One of them, yes, the Uusi MV-lehti, the MV magazine, is the most obnoxiously, the one that attacks mainstream media for, censoring and takes the attack to them, and honestly is a very belligerent force in the media landscape. Of course, these alt medias are somewhat small, but it's where the ripple starts into the wave. So yes, the Uusi MV-lehti is known for a lot of contributions from people who are very compromised to the East, to say the very least. They don't hide it very well, honestly. And it's kind of funny because they are let be because they are a perfect target for, the liberal establishment to, see, hey, here are these right wingers. Look at them. They're all Russians.
Yeah. That's it's I don't think we have anything even remotely close to that in Norway. But I mean, that's sort of why Finland is a bit interesting, because it's got a bit of a one foot in each camp situation going on at times. Not that I'm accusing you of being Russophiles, but I'm just saying, historically speaking, you have a bit more of a relationship with them than someone like Sweden or Norway.
Yeah, geography creates these realities that must be dealt with and lived with.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the same here. It's the same here in Denmark. Like there is no such thing as Russophilia here. And I
Yeah,
suspect
I wanted to open up. I mean, we did a quick sort of walkthrough of the media houses here. Berkarl, do you have anything else you want to talk about, or should we do? If anyone has any questions to Berkarl about the Finland
Well,
overview, we can.
I just like to say the other magazine there, Uusi Suomi,
Hmm.
is
Sorry, yeah.
basically a magazine that is not Russophile, but is pretty much a standard, the most so-called standard nationalist or Civnat conservative web publication. So the original Uusi Suomi magazine was started in 1997 as a reaction against joining the European Union out of the ideal that we should, actually live up to the idea of not being the idea of neutrality, because we were under the Soviets for so long, saying that we were neutral when we weren't. So now we should actually, try to do that. But of course, it's for a nation this small, it's in practice impossible, really. So
Yes, of course.
yeah,
I'll derail real quick if you.
No, I'm pretty much done now. I just wanted to get
Okay.
that.
I'll derail real quick. Prudentialist again posted that I know Jack about Nordic media, or that region in particular, and that's why we're here, right? And I'd like to take a moment to thank all of you for coming on. I mean, I think the response that I've gotten to these Longhouse streams have been great. There's so many people in the comments and in direct messages as well that have told me that they're so glad to have finally found someone who's either a Norwegian or a fellow Nord that is actually a reactionary, and it's or at least in the I've taken to calling it the true right sphere, because I feel that reactionary isn't always the right moniker for what people are doing. And I want to thank specifically Luddic Path as well. If it wasn't for him, I don't think this would have happened, because he's the one who were like, hey, we should do a stream.
Yeah, one of the last points I wanted to make was the basically the IK Ilkka here. You can see it's I put it up more base than it's part of the print media, which I generally all put in the middle cringe section. But because Ilkka is from Ostrobothnia, which is a region of Finland where basically every single military uprising in history has started, it's basically the Finnish equivalent of they like to think of themselves as Finnish Texans in boomer truth terms, but in reality, it's the white movement in the Civil War was based in Ostrobothnia. The cudgel wars against the Swedish crown. No, actually,
so this
we're
is
starting there.
in the sort of city versus countryside war, so to speak. These guys are firmly the countryside. These are the quote unquote rednecks of Finland. Is that what you're saying?
Somewhat, yes, but there are also cities. Vasa is right by, and this dynamic of these Finnish nationalist movements starting out with the support of basically the old Swedish elite who had connections in Vasa, and these two forces working together to basically were the factions that stomped the Reds in the Civil War. So that's
Right.
why the local newspaper to this day is, it has to be a little bit more based.
Yeah, because you're from the region that sort of, yeah, I can see that. You don't have a choice.
You get run down otherwise.
Do anyone else have any questions for Berkarl on the state of the Swedish media landscape here? I'll take your loud silence as a no. Do you have anything else you want to talk about Burkhal, or should we move on to the next country?
I probably will have some things when we come to cover the other topics, but for a general overview, I think that's to start off.
Okay, sure.
Let's keep it short.
Yeah, we'll keep moving, and then we can, we'll open it up to more discussion after that. We have some more questions that I'd like to pose to the other panel members later. I'll just do for fun. I'll ask if anyone really wants to go next. Not, I have a random selection.
Pull it out of the hat, man.
I'll pull it out of the hat. And
Since you
it
have
is Norway is the next one. So it is Ludwig Path. Why don't you start this, and I'll try to support you as best as I can. I'll find the slides you sent me as well, or the photos you sent me as well. Would you like the media group one first? We cannot hear you. Is that does anyone else hear him, or is it just me?
No, I can't hear him.
Okay. Some technical difficulties. We'll wait with you, Ludwig Path, or maybe if he can reconnect, then everything will be fine. Let's give him a moment. All right. You know what? We'll just keep moving with Leo. Was my next one in the hat. So Sweden it is.
Sweden it is. Past Central.
You sent me a photo, didn't you? Yes, here it is.
Yeah, in the chat.
Yep.
It's a bit of a...
This is the same graph. It's
the
same schlock informative based cringe political compass.
Yeah. So essentially, I think we can start with the media houses because we have... well, the big one is Bonnier Publishing. This is owned by the Bonnier family, who owns a lot of things.
Someone in the chat said the Bonnier name has a tendency to repeat itself when it comes to at least Nordic media.
Yeah,
it's here too.
Bonnier Media Group has a quite wide reach. Essentially, they own a lot of newspapers. They own the old state cinema company. A lot of small seemingly independent book publishers and newspapers. Well, not really newspapers, magazines rather. So they have quite a wide reach on the area. And then the other large behemoth is the Norwegian Schibsted Group.
Yeah, of course they're quite big in our country as well, of course.
Yeah. And then you have the old, like Birkal said before, Telia, that used to be the government's phone company up until they went private, and the government owns like 40% of that company. And BlackRock owns 2%, of course.
I mean, don't they own everything 2%?
More or less, they have a 2% minority stake in the universe somehow.
Yes.
And then you have the Nordic Entertainment Group, which is MTG Media. They were started in the mid 90s when they deregulated the TV markets, because before that you only had the state media market, so no private actors. But if we go to the graph here, we can start looking at the Bonnier Group here, which has, we can start with the most or worst part, which is DN, Dagens Nyheter, or translated the Daily News, which essentially is the Swedish variant of the Guardian.
Oh wow! All right.
Yeah, they call themselves.
Is it full on? Like, is it as paused, I guess, as the Guardian is as well.
In some cases, I would be inclined to say more, because
It's more okay.
yeah, because they are not only are they the Guardian, because they are also, imagine if everyone on the Guardian just loved the American State Department.
All right.
There isn't a NATO conflict DN hasn't cheered on, and they like, I think every 2 months they run an op-ed that Sweden should join NATO. It's completely insane, and they have been on the forefront of trying to propagandize for lockdowns during COVID, even if it's against our foundational law, so the government can't do it. They don't care. They wanted lockdowns anyway.
Lock me down harder, yes.
Yeah, very much so.
That must have been very strange, considering that, it's a bit of a meme in the Nordics that Sweden has been very laissez-faire with the lockdowns, to have like one paper that is very pro-lockdown, considering your stance on it.
Yeah, but you have to remember, there's also a small fact, and that I think like half of the staff, editorial staff on Dagens Nyheter, votes for the Greens, the
All right.
the environmentalists.
Yeah.
So they are, like all environmentalist movements in Europe, they are this small concentration of hyper urban people that lives in the managerial state and don't really understand that people live in other ways than they do.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to take a moment here, and this is because this is the first Swede that we're on. So this is my first chance to do it. But Ludwig, can you
You hear me now?
imagine a Swedish green? Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, that's good.
How horrible that must be.
Well, yeah, it is sort of a meme, I guess, there in Norway among right wingers, that Sweden has it's like just the worst country in terms of immigration, in terms of multiculturalism. Because I think they were the first to really try to introduce that and try to run the sort of mass propagandizing and to be like really serious about the kind of new world of multiculturalism. But it seems to have changed a little bit with the lockdown. Is this accurate, Leo?
Yeah, well, not really the lockdowns. I mean, it's one of those gradual things. It takes time, and it's hard to see before it really becomes prominent. So essentially, it starts during the migrant crisis. So 5-6 years ago, and because when all that was going on, people were going like, wait, this is too much, this is getting out of hand. And then things has been, well, getting more and more and more out of hand since then. And well, back then the Sweden Democrats, like I don't really know, well, let's call them very right wing. They essentially just had a few percent when we're in parliament, and now they are the third or second largest party, depending on which most recent scandal has been breaking out in the media sphere. So
Yeah, I wonder why.
yeah, very odd. Might be the drug gang war that is going on in the metropolitan areas, perhaps. I don't know.
Yes, some cities. We should keep this for its own stream, because we can probably go on forever about.
Oh yeah, I can.
The absolute state of Sweden.
Yeah,
let's keep going with the next one, the SYS you have there.
Doing a stream on white flights in Europe.
Yes.
That might be a good topic. Anyway, Sydsvenska Dagbladet, SYS, also owned by the Bonnier Sphere. It's more of a regional paper with quite a large circulation in southern Sweden. That is a variant of Dagens Nyheter, because people in the south of Sweden don't like reading Dagens Nyheter because it's a capital-based paper. And, well, every regional area doesn't like the capital, so it's that kind of conflict. But they essentially have the same conclusions on everything. and reach the same kind of demographic. So there
Right.
isn't. It's perhaps they are a bit milder on some things. So it's say just the Guardian, not Guardian Plus.
Yes. So it's not much better, really.
No,
And
not
then you
really.
have the staunch centrists in the middle there.
Yeah, the Expressen. It's another one owned by
Express,
Bonnier.
yeah.
The Express, yeah, owned by the Bonnier Media Group. It's but it's based in Gothenburg. Originally was because we had this Göteborgs-Posten that they bought up and more or less devoured and incorporated into their own kind of thing. They still have that, but they mixed up the what do you call it? The redaktion.
The editorial board.
Yeah, the
or-
editorial
yeah.
staff.
Yes.
But in any case, they are, well, they're shit libs, more or less. If, let's call a spade a spade.
Yes.
So, but they do some quite good. So they in informative work, but it's mostly just
It's a tabloid, so it should
bad.
go
Yeah,
out
it's
all
a
the way on the
tabloid.
list.
It's bad. It's bad takes and look what this celebrity did this week, and it's just
It's a generally very uninteresting, and when they try to say something real, they miss.
yeah, it's a hit and miss most of the times. And then we have AB, Aftonbladet, the evening letter. That is the Social Democrats party paper.
Right.
These days however, they are bought up by Schibsted Media Group, and well, they're social democrats. They like taxation and think that have this running thing that gang wars in concerning drugs is generated by the upper classes in the affluent areas that buys the drugs. That's why things are going bad out in the sticks and the projects. So that's the sense. They have all these really weird talking points, and well, they're just so bad. I don't know what to say.
No, that's sometimes it's hard to put it into words, right?
Yeah, because they do a lot of. The thing is that they do a lot of good investigative journalism, but then they slant it in a way that just you essentially have to redact half the article just to get the facts
Right.
out, and then read it again. So
we
that's
have
why.
some of those here as well, where like in a technical sense, the work done is good, but the the message is absolute horseshit. So there's a lot of wasted effort, I think.
Yeah, and then we have the SVD, which is also Schibsted Media Group, where is the more or less the urbanite bourgeoisie newspaper. It was one of the old conservative newspapers, but there's nothing conservative about it anymore, really. It's
right.
It's more like
as with most of them, I guess. The old conservative papers.
It's a more of a middle class paper that wears the skin suit of what SVD was like 30 or 40 years ago. So it presents the idea that it's a conservative and authoritative source and all that, but it's really just nervous urbanite middle class stuff, all of it. And the takes are, well,
yeah, I just went into it, and the first things are like it's anti-Trump stuff, and it's
yeah, I think you can say everything about below the schlock and informative side of things here really got the Trump derangement syndrome. They essentially just parroted democratic talking points. I think.
Yeah, and we're gonna get into that later as well. I think because I think we all felt I called it the Trump effect when I sent out the talking points.
Yeah. In any
Okay,
case,
so-
BI is the daily industry. It's an
Yes,
industry
I was.
paper.
Oh, okay. So
It's-
that's why it's informative, because it's
Yeah,
dealing
it's-
with facts.
They essentially just do this kind of thing, and the thing that why it goes down a little bit on the cringe is because, well, they do some, people interest stories, but it's always some female girl boss type that they do. They do the expose on and stuff like that. So that's where it goes there, and they are also owned by the Bonnier Media Group. Then we have the two outliers. I've taken in NY there, Nyheter idag, also the news today, which is a web-based but very prolific paper. We're started by the absolute madman Chang Frick a couple of years ago. And no, he is interestingly not Asian. He just has a weird name, and he's kind of a special person.
Okay.
And they are, if we would say, working class liberal, like classical, don't step on snake liberals. And they do a lot of good investigative journalism, and well, for being Swedes, they're kind of based. And then we have I have taken in here NVT, which is the Nya Värmlandstidningen, the new provincial magazine, because they own a shit ton of local papers, and they are one of the few newspapers who have retained full control and over their editorial board, and they are a family-owned corporation. So they are wholly owned only by the Ander family, who are very, very conservative.
Right.
And they are also one of the most profitable newspaper groups, because they own like 15 local newspapers in central Sweden. In the home province, they own every other regional paper, and they own 2.7 or 2.8% of the Schibsted group, and 1/4 or 1/5 of Bergens Tidende, the newspaper from Bergen in Norway.
Yes, in Norway. Yeah.
And I
Okay,
think they
interesting.
own they have some small holdings in some Finnish media corporation as well, but it's a percent here and a percent there.
So what makes these sort of this far up on the based scale compared to the other ones?
Well, essentially, they only take in very good people. They have essentially never went away from this. Since they are pro-nuclear, have always been against renewables except for personal use. They're free market and personal choice and consequence people, and they essentially always stand against in their editorials and op-eds against the modernity, more or less. And I think they propagate for an idea that they want back to the early 1950s, that sort of a society.
Okay, interesting. That's I don't mean to be glib about this, but it sounds like they're based because they're the only sane people in the room here.
Yeah, this is of course a very subjective scale.
Yes, of course. I'm just
Seen
trying
from
to gauge it.
an internal perspective, if you will.
So is this newspaper shunned in the mainstream?
No, not. Did you say shunned?
Yes,
Yeah,
this is
that
like,
they,
if you read NWT, you're a racist.
you're Nazi, basically.
No. You're just you're just not a communist. No, they are so old because
like the
and they
rest
have
of
had
Sweden,
this.
is that it?
They just have always had this stance. So and they are essentially a smaller newspaper. So they fly a bit under the radar of the tabloids, and well, it's it ranges from all social classes really, but it's like essentially started out as an upper class or managerial class newspaper in the early start of the century.
Yes, yes.
But you said it was a local paper, so is it just an area of Sweden that gets access
No,
to that?
they give out they distribute. I think it's in 4 central provinces,
Mhm.
and a physical newspaper, and they have a website as well, and they do. I know they do deliver to the entire country because they are local people, like up in northern Sweden and in southern Sweden, who wants the paper, and then has to get it mailed to them because they can't get it in the morning, so they get it the day after.
Okay, so I mean, you have to be doing something right if people are doing that. And you said also that a lot of people are buying it. Is that something that's sort of like a recent jump, or has it been like a steady growth
No,
since?
I think it's a slow and steady growth. They were
Okay.
all of the local papers and out in the provinces had waning subscriptions and waning profitability. NVT essentially just went in and bought them up for nothing and started making them turn a profit. So, but they're good business people who manage the papers, because they have essentially gone the quality over quantity route. So they take a little higher price for their product, but it's a good product, so people tends to want to buy it.
Uh-huh. Vingol says in the chat that Swedes have the highest proportion of based as well as past people in the Nordic countries. I don't know what the if there's any
I
truth
think
to that,
he's
but maybe
quite,
that would be it. That
yeah.
it's
I think that's there's some truth to that, because we are essentially the the most extreme of all our Scandinavian cousins. We go the
well, yeah,
furthest in
that's
all
certainly true.
directions, and preferably at the same time. So
Yes. Now, is there anything anyone else would like to ask Leo about the Swedish stuff here, or should we move on? Do you have anything else, Leo?
no, not on this part. I mean, there's some more stuff, of course, we can take. But we said
Right.
we were going to cover that later. So
We have a general view of how the state of Sweden. I think just as a quick note, I think some of the stuff that from Finland, if we're gonna place Finland and Sweden on their paper media, I'd say that almost Finland is probably a bit to the right of Sweden.
Yes,
yeah,
that is
by and
true,
large.
but it's only because we are 10 years behind Sweden in everything. So,
Okay. So it's a matter of time.
yes, our elite these days, or at least since the Soviet Union fell, has basically looked to Sweden for what to do in literally everything the government or anyone in the state apparatus does. And we are quite literally 10 years behind Sweden in everything.
Okay.
I wouldn't call
That's
that behind.
So it's coming.
Yeah, we're based.
Path is coming.
We're based, and if a turn comes, we'll be late on that as well. But the rot will have not seeped in as deep.
Yes. And that's something we've talked about a bit earlier as well, that the benefit of being on the edge of an empire is that you can there's some room for interpretation when the new commandments are handed out. And as long as you follow the general line, you can get away with some misdemeanors. Whether or not you actually want to follow them, though, that's another question. Okay.
Yeah, that's a very different thing. Under the Soviet Union, of course, we didn't want to actually do them, but
Right.
these days they very much do.
So now in the magic hat, I have pulled out Nordic, and then we're
Let's
going
go.
to go to Denmark after that. So first it's Norway. Nordic, are you still here?
I'm still there. You hear me?
Still here. We're live. Okay.
Yep.
Did you want the media house
Yeah,
picture
just
before the
we can
graph?
start with the media house overview.
Here we go.
Let's see, there we go.
Some
We
of
can
these names
zoom a
will
little
be
bit
known
there.
to you guys.
So can you zoom a little bit more?
Oh,
Maybe
I'll
I can
try.
just I'll
I can just
get the
scroll
big
as we
screen
go.
here. So
Is
there we
better?
go. So Schibsted, this media group, is the biggest player, and it was already mentioned by Leo. They have all the like really big newspapers. Let's see, I had a link to like some of the most read newspapers in Norway, and that's what you're going to be seeing on this in this graphic. So VG, Verdensgang, means the way of the world. Aftenposten, the Evening Post. E24, that's a sort of economics newspaper. So yeah, the BT, that's the Bergen Times. The U there and these others, that's the local news. These are district newspapers for Trondheim, Bergen, Agder, like these really large districts in Norway. So they have all of the big.
We're talking the western, the northern, and the southern district, respectively.
Yep.
So they're covering pretty much all of Norway, and then you have the Evening Post, of course, which is primarily an Oslo-based, but also national newspaper.
Yep. So the VG and Aftenposten are sort of tabloids. I get back to them later. Not particularly interesting. Aftenposten is considered to be. I mean, it has been considered to be more lowbrow, but I honestly it's considered highbrow. But I really struggle to see the difference. I don't know about you, Walrus.
I was going to say actually that the Evening Post, the Aftenposten, is the paper for the the boomers who think they're smarter than they are.
Yeah,
you read this if it's firmly in the midwit reader group, I'd say.
it is the midwit paper.
Yes.
I mean, if you've worked at places with a high that are like these middle class workplaces, the opinions that you're going to hear parroted is going to be from Aftenposten.
Yes, and certainly probably for me and Ludwig, who are both software people. We work with a lot of people who pretty much just parrot stuff from there, because that's the quote unquote smart paper for smart people.
Oh yes, and you can just read it and you know what they're going to say. It's very predictable.
Yes.
Let's see. So I mean, the Schibsted also has like their portfolio is massive. It's
it's
really
huge.
is like they have Finn.no, that's considered like this marketplace. They have financial services. And we could look at that later, but like it's a bit outside of the media. But the amount of influence that this company has is quite. It's not to be underestimated. They are pretty much under every rock, so to speak. And of course, BlackRock has ownership. That was already mentioned by Leo. That we have on media. That was considered, if I'm not mistaken here, like this older type of like working class media house that has been bought up, and it's been used to sort of create a large merger where they own pretty much 80, like it says there, 80 regional and local newspapers. They own Nettavisen. That is this sort of tabloid. It's a bit less offensive, at least from a reactionary perspective, than some of these.
It has a right wing slant, but I mean that's
it is a bit superficial, but you're not going to be sitting and just cringing your way through every article on it. So Romerikes Blad, so it's also one of the most read ones. So I think that's from the Oslo area.
Yes.
Aller Media, they own the Daily Mail, as it says, Dagbladet. It's also one of these tabloid newspapers like VG or Aftenposten, quite indistinguishable from those two. It's probably, I think it's probably one of the most brain dead newspapers, but it has this type of they go for this type of scrolling. This kind of scrolling experience where you're just kind of scrolling and you're not even reading.
God, going on there, I don't do it really anymore, but going on their website is a fucking assault on the eyes.
Well, it is. I mean, they use this sort of war fonts. There's like 130 pixels size. Everything is like it's gigantic.
I'm just gonna share this because it's
You can show a link maybe.
I know this is Nordic, but this is like it's very specifically, everything is insane. It is like you can't.
Is designed
really-
for boomers on phones. If I ever
I
saw it.
guess, yeah, maybe.
That looks eerily like what we have going on here, like the exact same style of design, and with the big letters and of stupid shit.
Oh
And
yeah, I'm
dumb
sure
shit.
there's a lot of shared knowledge, quote unquote, between these
Yeah,
these
let's call
papers.
it that.
So then we have the NHST Media Group, and they own Dagens Näringsliv and some other, investment-related products. Dagens Näringsliv is one of it's like the daily private sector, daily business newspaper, and I mean it's not based in any way. They will have a lot of only in the sense that they do these articles that are dedicated exclusively to economics and the who is buying what, basically. It's useful from that perspective. But they will have a lot of these editorials that kind of go into this equality in the workplace. But they'll just, comment on current affairs, and it's always in this kind of like woke slant, but it's a bit modified for the audience. So
It's similar to what Leo mentioned, but yes,
Yes.
as sort of the Americanisms creep into the corporate world, it's gotten more and more girl bossy.
Let's see, and the last one is the directly subsidized by governments. So I mentioned the Norwegian government subsidizing. I mean, it works in two ways. Either that they're directly subsidized and they get a certain amount of money. I think some of these papers that I mentioned here, like Klassekampen, that's sort of this Marxist newspaper, Class Struggle, and Vårt Land, that's like this Christian newspaper, they receive almost, I think, 45 million Norwegian kroners a year just to stay in business.
If we're gonna do a rough estimation to what will it be dollars, that'll be
it's
probably
just take one comma. It's like 4.5 million.
yeah, it's about 4.5,
dollars.
maybe 4.2 or something. Yeah.
Yes. And I mean, of course, they still charge. You still have to pay for their services. And the other part of the subsidy is that they retract the VAT from the, like, if you're actually selling paper, then you're not paying the VAT on it. So it is basically 25% cheaper than it would have been with any other product.
One of the
So-
very few things in Norway that is without a VAT.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pretty much. And I mean, especially with these larger media houses, if they distribute a very large amount of paper, it's a pretty good profit that can be drawn from that. Of course, you have a lot of these other. I'm just mentioning on these government subsidies here is that they mentioned, in the Wikipedia article and some of the literature, that they didn't want to subsidize things that are explicitly political. But of course, they just mean they don't want to subsidize stuff that's right wing. It's just so obvious there, because the
Yes.
Klassekampen is basically like this Marxist newspaper. They'll subsidize
That's
Marxism.
the
and-
Marxist newspaper.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Christian newspapers, but anything right wing, they're not willing to give money to. So I guess you could
Yeah,
move to
it's
the.
if we're gonna get into it, but any of the sort of the alt media, if they were to go paper, they would never get this. Yes,
Nope.
the class company is the class struggle, as Mongroli and Doggerland pointed out for you English listeners. So yes, you can see that it's a specifically Marxist paper. I'm gonna open the graph for you now, Ludwig.
Yep. So now I put the logos right in. The other guys who were smarter than me, I mean, I like the stars and the dots. They take up less space. But I just put someone in here that that I'm the most exposed to. So we got in the bottom left corner of VG, Dagbladet. Like these are like you showed, like these total schlock, 130 pixel headings on everything, stupid articles. Sexualization seems to have crept in a lot more as well. I don't know if you've noticed that, Walrus, but it like with these scrolling through these papers, I would
whenever
be
I get
reluctant.
linked to something that's posted in any of these papers, the ads on the side are always here's how you can have better sex, or etc. etc.
Oh yeah, and they'll talk about have some special like how to improve your sex life and these this is 5 things you can do with your ass. And I mean, I would be reluctant to show this to a child. I don't know how you could do that without having to sit and explain a lot of this deviant stuff to them.
Yeah, and even though most of it is behind a paywall, like the images they use and the language they use to try to grab your attention is, borderline at best.
Yes. So we have Nettavisen we talked about. I mean, it's just it is tabloid. It is still a lot of the same stuff. It's just less overtly subversive. Aftenposten, the midwit paper we mentioned. I mean, I put it a bit further to the right because it is more like most of it is behind the paywall, and they will do longer articles. But even those articles, it seems to be dropping in quality. That seems to be a trend actually for almost all of these online papers.
I agree. I for a long time have or did subscribe to the Evening Post there because they did, at times like actual journalism, and but the quality of it has dropped significantly. And with its history of being an actual right-wing paper, and even going back to the fun times of the mid-century, a paper that supported the mustache people, it's certainly gone a very different direction. Let's put it like that. And these days, it's purely, it's purely boomerism, midwittery, globalist stuff, really.
They do try to
something slips through the cracks, but
they do try to bring in some of these younger journalists where they'll sit and talk about incels and no fap and these things. I mean, I've seen that show up. Show up there. So I mean, of course, you know the angle they're going to take on it. I really don't want to go into it. It's just like the standard. It is almost painfully predictable. It's like, yeah, porn good, white men bad. It's the standard line that they take. It is almost painfully predictable to the point where like they don't even want to be consistent. They know the friend enemy distinction, and they're just gonna hammer the enemies of the Global Homo project.
Yes.
Sounds nice.
If I move into then the quadrant, the sort of cringe informative quadrant, I put Vårt Land there. This means our land, and that is, it is a Christian newspaper, and that they will take the Christian angle, but they're just getting more and more liberal. Like every time I go back there to read their articles, it's more of this kind of liberation theology now. They talk about inclusion of the LGBTQ. I mean, that takes up a lot of space there now. So yeah, it's LGBT.
It's a
inclusion.
big thing going on in the Christian circle in Norway, and I was reading something the other day about in the bishop. There are a couple of like bishopric positions that are opening up across Norway. So basically, the leadership of most of the Christian Norway, the official state church, or the quote unquote state church, it's being phased out, is going through a bit of a change right now. And for those of you who are Christian in Norway listening to this, your choice right now is basically between a bishop that supports gay rights to the point where they support marriage between homosexual partners, or a bishop that doesn't support marriage between homosexual partners, but he supports priests being homosexual. So those are your choices if you're a Christian, by the way. So it's just going along with the whatever is happening to Norwegian Christianity.
I feel like it's almost like doomer porn for Christians going in on that website, because they're both assaulted with this LGBTQ stuff, and the number of Christians in Norway is rapidly diminishing.
Yes, it's a bit of like a reacting to the nonsense the left is doing, and then just repeating that until you're defeated.
Yep. So I mean but that's why I like to go in there, just to see how far we've gone. I don't know how much that is connected to the subsidizing, because I mean, I was thinking in the future that I would do a stream about LGBT laws in Norway and how the landscape has changed on that quite a bit. And a lot of these things that have come in, and I think the reason that newspapers like this feel pressured to do more of this positive LGBT coverage is because it's tied to a lot of the rewriting or reinterpretation of certain laws and how the subsidizing actually works. So you have these kind of diversity quotas and these requirements. If you're actually going to get money, and they're starting now to, lock out certain Christian denominations in Norway because they're not either because they're not diverse enough, or because they can't prove that they're that they would bring on like a female priest or a gay priest or a trans priest or something like that. They have to prove that they're non-discriminatory on every level, and if they can't, they're not going to get any subsidies.
Yep.
So moving up a little bit, you have the Dagens Næringsliv, 24. I mean, I would put them on top of each other because, but the logos are a little bit big. It is basically the same, economics newspapers, and being where we are, I just appreciate a newspaper that can just be dedicated to a subject matter and not have to bring in all this kind of woke stuff into it. It's a little bit like that Moldbug thing where he says, you're subscribing to you're subscribing to a magazine about cats in the mid-century Germany, and suddenly that magazine is starting to talk about the German cat only. And it's a bit of the same thing with these economics papers, with like papers on technology and IT as well.
Yeah, suddenly everything is like green technology and beyond meat stuff, but it's still in the frame of the subject matter.
Yes, or gender equality. I guess that's one of the things that bothered me the most. You see, like with these tech magazines and these economics magazines, oh, well, look at this convention that we had, and they'll show the men's bathroom and the women's bathroom. There's a long line to the men's bathroom. There's no line for the female bathroom. Oh, well, we need to fix this. This is a disaster. Well, it is what it is. Minerva on the right there. I mean, this is basically like the Norwegian, like David French publication. It is a sort of like this pay for online thing where they go with this kind of classic liberal slant. And of course, it is pretty cringe. I'm not going to lie. It is like this thing where you don't really understand, or, how did we get here? I mean, we got where we are because of people like that, but they are willing to go in and do like these more principled deep digs into certain topics from the kind of liberal perspective.
Yeah, so I'll say in terms of the sort of the analytics or the technical journalism work, it's solid, but the subject matter and the conclusions are oftentimes off the mark.
Yep. So I actually put Klassekampen above them. I mean, despite it being a Marxist newspaper, it is it's actually very good. Reading these paperbacks, it's a completely serious newspaper. There's no irony there. They're not trying to be fashionable, and you can read articles there. I mean, it's going to have this kind of Marxist angle to it, but you might actually learn something, whether you're reading about energy or foreign policy. Then we get to Steigan.no. That's like the plus version of that. I mean, Steigan is basically like this old kind of commie guy, a little bit similar to Richard Wolff on YouTube, but maybe even a little bit more, what would be described as right-leaning. He is just kind of like this, he has this anti-power angle, basically. So he will just attack power, and he will name names, like they'll talk about BlackRock and Vanguard and, what's happening to the economy. It maps on to right-wing.
It's mostly a blog, really, in a paper form. It feels that way.
It is very detailed. So
yeah,
if we get up a little bit further here, Dagen, like this is a smaller newspaper. They also receive some government funding, a lot less. It is like a Christian, more like a conservative Christian newspaper. So they're not going to be like, oh, we love LGBT stuff. And it is more of like they're just documenting what's going on with the church. They're documenting the decline from the perspective that this is not a good thing. document, it is like I think, in my view, like this is the best right wing. It doesn't say much because it's not like it didn't make the top right corner, but I think they have some of the better takes, and the coverage. It has like this very anti-Islam, what do you call, the counter jihad angle to it.
I was going to say that's my opinion of them, is that they're very counter jihad with all the faults that brings with it. But yes, if you want counter jihad, you can go to them.
So they also have a publishing house, and you have a lot of decent stuff that's being published on that platform. That would have been just too spicy to publish on other publishing houses.
And when both this and Reset, the next one were launched, they're pretty new papers, quote unquote new.
Oh yeah.
They were attacked from everyone else or every other angle for being this is the new alt-right Nazi. I'd said the bad word. Well, it's 1 hour and 26, so it's fine. I'm quoting when I say this, but they were called all these names, of course, because they were to the right of everyone else.
Yeah. Did he set? I should actually have. I looked a bit. I don't read it that much, so I've been looking at it more lately. I probably should have put it in the left top quadrant, because the quality of the journalism is actually not as good as I thought it was. Like, this is the paper that was created by Helge Lurås. I saw somebody in the comments mention him, so we might get back to.
Yeah, maybe
we might get back to him later. I mean, he is this type of guy that has, he's very credentialed, and he has like this anti-jihad angle to it. But it's ultimately superficial, and it has this problem where he's really scared to say anything that could make him look bad. I think he's almost a little bit too careful.
He's trapped by the optics game, yes.
A little bit, like someone like Sam Harris, where they're just so scared of saying anything that's kind of controversial. They have to be very careful, but the paper itself doesn't do. Yeah, well, it could have been a lot better. So I don't know if I should have added some more papers there, Walrus, or if there's some.
I think
we've
covered the most ones. I would like to add that you have the state-owned paper, which is for the TV channel as well, which I'd place very far left. It would probably be, in terms of schlock versus informative, it tends to be relatively informative. But it's very much in the cringe category when it comes to its politics.
Yeah,
I mean, of course, the state's apparatus is never going to tell you that the state is bad, obviously. But
no, but it is
dream,
just
right?
If it's NRK or that NRK newspaper, it is just pure poison. I feel like they are really at the kind of edge of. They are almost like this vanguard of trying to push more ground for the radical left.
Yes,
and trying to sort of normalize a lot of deviant sexuality, a lot of this, especially I would just describe it as like child brainwashing. And we talked about having an episode on NRK where we could just show clips.
that would be funny.
It would be pretty funny. That could be like a bonus episode.
What I will say, and we like comparing to the other graphs that we show, because I agree quite a lot with the way you've laid this out, and looking at the Finnish one and the Swedish one, you had this sort of like gradient moving. I don't know if you can see my mouse on the screen. It's sort of like moving like this, but I feel that in Norway there's a dividing line here. There's a very strong dividing line between the sort of the cringe and based takes. Either you're on the cringe side or you're on the base side. There's no one in between, really.
Yeah, it seems to be a sort of homogenizing process with a lot of these newspapers where they just become more and more like each other. So you either just have this one, like these sort of cringe takes, they just copy each other, or you do the base takes. I don't know, like somebody, Mongolian Doggerland posted that they just repost Tucker Carlson on
Right.
Reset.
I've seen them actually literally repost Tucker Carlson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's where they'll just monitor Fox News or something, or these
That's these guys. Yeah.
and like with these other ones, they use this service that's called NTB. That is this kind of news monitoring service. I actually I tried to make an account with them, but I needed to have my own like registered business to get in there. But quickly explained that it's like this news service that monitors, stuff like CNN. It monitors The Guardian, monitors all these past newspapers, and they just give them like these sort of template articles where they can just go in and change a few words and translate a little bit and put their name on it and just send it out. I mean, I think that's why they're so homogenous. I could be wrong. It would be interesting to hear if somebody had experience from that field, but unlikely that we're going to get someone like that on the stream.
Yeah, I doubt that we're going to be able to get them get them to spill their secrets here. But maybe. If you work in the journalism industry and you made your way over here, shoot me a direct message on Twitter or Telegram or something, and we can talk. Okay, I think we're done with the Norway overview. It is in many ways similar to Sweden, but I'd say it's a little bit different, and maybe that's because we have been maybe a little bit more cozying up to the UK and the US than you have, so we're a bit further along that path.
Yeah, and you also have the oil curse, so you're suffering from the Dutch disease, as they say.
Easy. All right.
But like you mentioned earlier, Walrus, there is a lot of room here for something else to come in that doesn't suck. I mean, you talked about you had gotten a lot of positive feedback on this stream, just that we can do something like this because we're covering an area of politics that these even the top right corner ones are not covering.
Oh, Norway is completely, and I'm sure that probably goes for many of you as well, but the traditionalist view, or the anti-modernity, or the any semblance of like quote unquote true right, true pre-1945 right does not exist.
I agree.
Okay. Then I think we should move on to Denmark. Emil?
Yes, Jens. I'm here.
Okay.
Well, I'll begin with a little disclaimer. Unfortunately, I haven't prepared nearly as much as the rest of you gentlemen, neither with the nice slides nor the research.
That slide was very very last minute, so
yeah.
Well, okay.
I didn't even manage to do that. So, but I can talk a little bit about it. I think that it sounds like it's very similar to what the rest of you guys have going on. We have little, like, I guess you could call them enclaves of different media outlets that kind of are lumped together in terms of like, you have some that are quote unquote conservative, and those a few that are liberal and a few that are social democrat kind of thing. And then within those groups, they have different outlets that like are one are more cringe than the next, obviously. So
yes,
if we go with the quote unquote conservatives first, those would probably be what we call the Berlingske. They also have something called BT. And they are basically tabloids, but BT is more tabloidy than Berlingske itself. And when people categorize them as conservative, it's not really because they are too conservative. It's just because they choose to talk about things that conservatives usually care about, like the justice system or military or like foreign affairs and stuff like that. But it's not really like necessarily conservative positions. at least not what I would determine as being conservative as such.
Right.
And there's
It's a bit of lip service, really, to
right,
conservative,
exactly, and a lot of
okay,
and a lot of like talking about immigration and Islam and all of these things. Like, so they're just talking about topics that usually concern conservatives in this
okay.
country.
So it's a bit of it's that standard sort of counter jihad containment style writing.
Yes, precisely. Right, but they're they're actually doing a very good job at looking like they are holding conservative positions, but still pushing it away from conservative positions. If you really read what it is that they're writing, so
Yes, it becomes an art form at some point.
yeah, and
Almost.
it's actually quite impressive, although it's sad.
Yes.
Then we have something called Jyllandsposten, which is more liberal, but again, it's not so much the positions; it's more the topics. So they'll talk more about economic stuff, and they'll talk more about stuff that are related to personal freedom versus collectivist issues. And then we have the guys called Politiken and Ekstrabladet, which is basically like more socialist leaning things, but it's in the same sense. So they'll just pick topics that socialists care about and do a lot of tabloidy shit about that. There are two newspapers, but these are like weekly newspapers. One is called Weekendavisen, and the other is called Information. Information is quite progressive, I would deem it to be, and Weekendavisen is more conservative. And these can actually have some very interesting topics because they take stories and they go in depth with it and like really flush it out, so you can get like a decent overview of a given topic that they've chosen to pick, where the rest of the ones that I just mentioned are mainly just picking like sensationalist shit. But they are unfortunately the most read in this country. Like I mentioned, in terms of the television, we have Danmarks Radio, which is like the massive the spider web network that kind of has its tentacles everywhere. But they do have a program called Debatten, which basically means the debate. And there they usually pick politicians or experts from the various different sides, and they do a good job of presenting a debate in like a neutral way. But the show host is also doing a very fine job of like interrupting whenever the more dangerous positions are being flushed out.
Right.
So he's there to like really make sure that everything is PG.
Yeah, he's got. We have something similar from the state-owned
right
channels as well, where it's a playpen, sure, but they're very, very, very good at patrolling sort of the edges. No one gets to go outside.
Exactly, and they're actually what's even like. I mean, on one hand, you could probably see it as a good thing, but on the other, it makes everything more sinister. Is that in Danish media, they're very good at allowing controversial stuff to be shown, but then they immediately shut it down. They make sure that it's not like being taken seriously. So they
you
can
were
give
roboting a bit there. Sorry, can you repeat yourself? Allowing what to be shown?
Like more controversial opinions and perspectives, but then they'll do a good cleanup job afterwards. So they create this illusion that, oh, we don't mind showing different points of view by actually bringing these guys in and letting them speak. But then they also do a very good job of like shutting them down and ridiculing them and making sure that they look nuts. And
is that
so,
something any of you have experienced from the other countries, Leo or Berkarl? Do you have something like that where they'll bring on ostensibly right-wing talking points, almost make them into a straw man, and then shut them down?
Yeah, the state television do have these so-called debate programs, but they aren't debates. They are how do you say it? Soundbite discussions, and they do much of the same. They never allow the discussion to get into the meat of the matter, so to speak, because then they start reeling it in and handing them the word over to someone else. Because you can have a little, but you can't get too close to anything because that's dangerous.
You might hit on something true.
Yeah, people
Right.
might listen.
Well, one thing that is really interesting is that every time you can watch Danish media, and this is even like whether it's politicians or whether it's experts or whatever it is, they always like to pull we're trying to avoid Swedish conditions card.
Oh, yeah, that's a word here too.
Yeah, and
Swedes
everyone
have
is like,
something to answer for here,
everybody is on board. It's almost like a gathering kind of card. Like if things get off the rails, we're like, well, we're trying to avoid Swedish conditions, and then everyone will be, that's right. Yeah, at least we're not as bad as Sweden.
That honestly sounds much better than what we have here. Over here is we are not on Sweden's path. We are not on Sweden's path is the line, and it's basically holding the fingers in your ears, really.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, in some sense, it's probably a little bit of an illusion, but it does make it seem like we're not exactly like as insane as Sweden yet, at least. And there is kind of like a pride in that, where it's like we do not want to be like Sweden. We're not trying to.
Yeah, we have the same thing certainly at least in the traditional sort of right-wing parties and politicians. That's a point of pride that we're avoiding Swedish conditions.
Yeah.
And certainly,
it's not even just a right-wing thing here. It's like a national thing. Like we don't want to be like Sweden. So.
Well, Rolling Dogger Land said, "I'd be keen to hear Swedish view on non-Swedish conditions." Leo, what do you think? I mean, we're all afraid of turning into Sweden. I think implicitly what we're talking about is the immigration stuff most of the time.
Yeah, it's usually about that. Well, but then again, in my experience, this kind of sentiment also existed before the immigration. Before, I mean, if you go back to the 70s, you will find more or less the same sentiments, but expressed in a different way in media.
Yes. The same things in Finland were mainly. When I was a child, the meme was that every Swede was gay, and that was because it was literally a synonym. Swede equals gay, and people threw the slur in the schoolyard in the same way. And it's mainly because of Finns traveling by cruise ship, boozing over to Stockholm, and seeing openly gay person flaunting it for the first time in their lives in the 90s. And Finland is a nation that's come out from the Iron Curtain, and suddenly you see this, and you're like, oh my God, they're all gay.
Bit of a culture shock, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously the immigration part is a big part of it, but it's actually everything. It's gender pronoun thing where you don't say he and she, you say hen and stuff like that. So it's actually basically everything we are trying to avoid.
Yeah, I think you should be careful about who you say that you do. Essentially, well, it's. I mean, not even our politicians does that. It's more of a It's more of a boomer meme, really. It's mostly just journalists, really.
Right. Yeah, I'm just pointing out that
does it as well, but
yeah, I'm just pointing out that they like to pull that card.
Yeah. Well, it's an easy card, and it's also Not only because it's an easy acquisition, because there's also some truth to it. So
Mhm. Yeah, but that's why I'm saying it's so sinister, because they pull it to make it like a thing we can gather around, so people can feel like, oh yeah, yes, of course, yes, and feel like it's all okay when really it's just diversion tactics.
a little bit of
Yes.
red meat.
Red meat, yes.
Yes,
Certainly.
precisely.
Do you have anything else you'd like to add, Emil?
No, not necessarily. I mean, I remember you mentioned Bonnier publications. They got their fingers here as well,
Yes.
with
Of course.
several. Well,
Probably
several.
BlackRock too, if we look into it.
Yeah. And funnily enough, they are usually involved with people who used to be politicians and then have changed their careers due to scandals. I don't know if there's a correlation between that.
Probably, yeah. You see that a lot in you see that sometimes in Norway, but you see that a lot more often actually in the UK, I think, where there's a bit more of a revolving door between political offices and the media.
Yeah. Right.
So that might be something that you have more in common with the Brits, actually.
Mhm. Yeah, that might be.
The politicians here tend to go into think tanks and get board
Yeah.
positions and stuff like that. So they are more on the other side of that that system. So more geared towards industry.
Yeah, I don't know about since both you and I, since both Denmark and Norway are part of NATO. I was interested in hearing in terms of is there a lot of saber rattling going on in Norway right now with the whole Ukraine thing?
Yes, and also since we've had the head of NATO has been a Norwegian former politician for the past, I don't know, what,
Right.
8 years, 10 years?
Yeah. Yeah, because there's been a lot here about it, where they like to play with their muscles and go, oh, we have to this, that, and the third, and yeah.
But it's a little bit more in Norway. It's a little bit more. Our relationship to Russia is kind of strange, at least in the media, because it's it tends to manifest as this. We're this tiny chihuahua hiding behind the big owner of the United States, and every time Putin looks down at us, we sort of scurry back behind him, right? Or behind the owner. So it's not. It's very strange. The saber rattling is more making sure that we paint Russia in as bad light as possible, and make sure that we're part of the NATO system forever and ever, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, you share a border with them as well, so maybe it's a little bit more.
We don't really have much of a choice, and it was something that was brought up in one of the first streams I did, because I said if we're going to get out of NATO, our other option is an alliance with Russia, because I mean, if we get into it with Russia, which we technically already do at times, disputing over oil drilling areas in the North Sea. I mean, who's going to come to help us if we're not part of NATO? So from a realpolitik sort of view, we don't really have much of a choice.
No. Yeah. I mean, at least here in Denmark, there is no such thing as Russophilia, and there's a lot of playing with the muscles, and just blaming Russia for everything, and Russia is just a big baddie, and it's our responsibility to put them in their place. And it's what exactly are we gonna do?
So what angle is that coming from, Emil? Because I know in Norway they're going off usually a lot of this LGBT stuff that Russia just they hate the the alphabet people, and they're punishing them, and so they're inhumane.
Yeah, well, it's actually funny that you mentioned that, because usually it's the more conservative types that like to try to be tough guys, but they'll use stuff like that like, oh well, they don't have human rights and they're against LGBT, to kind of pull everyone on board who
Yeah,
wouldn't
that's how this
necessarily
this whole machine works, right? You use the Brits call it the bulldog nationalists to sort of
Right.
pull out,
Exactly.
like, oh, we got to go to war. Well, why? Well, because we have to protect the progressive values. And it's like, well, do
Yeah.
we?
Right. We have to protect the Western values, they like to call it here,
Right.
which is
Which are
hilarious and sad.
which are gay values, as in
Yeah,
GAE.
apparently.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
Yeah, so
Well,
it's been
I
a
would
different
just
story.
I would just like to mention about the Russophilia thing in Finland. It's very much not an actual thing. It's well, if we say the GAE agents glow, then I don't know. Maybe the FSB Kremlin people should like radiate or something. You know, the Russophiles radiate a lot,
Right.
and there is no organic movement for that. But
Okay.
the opposition still is, you know, liberal democracy, all that.
Yeah, it's probably non-existent.
Yeah,
Here at least.
the Russia thing, or the Russian question, has a little bit of a different slant over here, because here it's always girdled in the colors of national sovereignty, and it's not really about what the Russians do, or it's more to go to a place where you can force project to keep the Russians out of our sphere. And this latest Ukraine thing, the funny thing is that there has been calls in the media to deploy troops to Finland because of our most recent defense pact that we signed last summer to reinforce and to reinforce and show solidarity with the Finns.
Yeah, I
Yes.
think the big talking point in the MSM that hasn't been, you know, complete. What was the word that was in the compass that was against informative schlop? Has been the talk of remilitarizing the Åland Islands. That's a really big thing on the media right now, and the conversation around that is very realistic. And you know, my stance is, of course, you know, establish Navy base immediately. And a lot of the Finns are against it, but I mean for it. But I don't think the Ålanders themselves they are very picky, and honestly, like, let's say they obviously want to join Sweden, but I don't think they would be ready for that if the answer from Sweden would be to also remilitarize them, which is highly likely.
It's not only highly likely; it is what's going to
Yeah.
happen.
So
I think they had
the Ålanders will have to be basically bent on this. They've lived in they get to actually set their own immigration policy. So Åland is actually one of the most and actually a lot of the Swedish towns on the coasts basically get to do this as well. The most
really?
Swedish town in existence is Larsmö near Vaasa in Finland. So
yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. It's an untouched city, basically.
well, it's a little town, but basically 100% Swedish.
Huh.
Or Finno-Swedish.
Okay, we're coming up on almost 2 hours. I hope you have the ability to keep going for a little bit more. I'm gonna go for a quick break just to get some water, etc. And then I would like to talk about the quote unquote Trump effect on your country's media. And I did this specifically because I know that the effect here was 4 years more or less of constant screeching. And it's certainly a well, if you didn't believe in the cathedral before Trump was elected, you have to after. There's just no way to not see that, at least here,
There,
with the way the journalists were acting.
there's a reason I mentioned the Sonoma
Yeah,
links to the CIA earlier, and that
right.
will come up.
So I'll if you're here, please talk about the Trump effect, etc. Talk amongst yourselves, as I heard other people say. I'll be back in a minute or two.
And now we'll discuss something completely different.
I don't know if this is true for maybe Sweden, Denmark, or Finland, but the interesting part of the Trump effect here in Norway is that they keep hammering on about it even after Trump got out of office. It's quite interesting. They're still writing more about Donald Trump, and then they're writing about Biden.
That's
currently,
really weird.
Yeah, that's common.
I don't see it almost at all over here. It's
Interesting.
basically forgotten because, Biden doesn't exactly present a good face for the regime, so they're just mostly quiet about it. And the bigger things like Russia, Poland, Ukraine, the Polish border, these are the international news that mostly are on now. So post-Trump, the Trump thing is out of here.
Yeah, post-Trump, the same thing here. It's really now that there has been rumblings in the Trump camp about the next election cycle, that I've seen a couple of small exposes, but it's mostly just explaining that this is going on. And what does that mean? Fucked if we know, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, our media likes to comment on things that he does and say as if he's still like relevant, because they kind of figured out that he's a good way to get attention and get viewers, I suppose.
Yeah, they are much like in Norway. The liberal media, which is almost all media in this country, essentially screeched for 4 years, and well, a little before and a little bit after. They were essentially doing the heckling before it looked like he could actually win, and then the screeching really began.
Yeah, it was exactly the same here. It was actually, you could tell that a lot of our media would literally copy paste what CNN and MSNBC and stuff like that would be talking about, and they would just translate it to Danish and say thing.
Yeah, that happened here too. Yeah. And you could see that some of it was machine translated, so the sentences didn't quite make sense.
Okay, machine.
Exactly.
That's pretty far. Like, at least they could, have a real person translate it.
Yeah, and it's also funny because, like, if you walk around, like, I don't think I've met a single person in Denmark who did not have a negative opinion of Donald Trump. Like, no one, not a single person would be even like, well, I mean, maybe nothing. Everyone just hates him. So there has been a clear media bias. It's the whole orange man bad thing. So.
The media bias is very much similar, but the average Finn very much would be isn't as the kind of Finns aren't brash, of course, as is Nordics in general aren't, but Finns especially so are known for not being very outspoken. But the American caricature of the very brash and outspoken Vince McMahon, Donald Trump figure is somewhat idolized. So the average Finn didn't, hate him so much, even though the media was unanimous in condemnation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I will add that I am back, by the way. I think some of that is true in my experience, but my experience might be a bit different when it comes to like Norwegians, because you get some people who have the sort of the software download media take on Trump from day to day. But other people who are like, well, I mean, oh shucks, those Americans and their, brash personalities. So that's something I've seen here too, Burkarl.
Yeah, I think it was something quite unique because America hasn't really been in Finnish news that long because, of course, our more Soviet neighbors were the main points of our international policy for the longest time, and America was never in a place to really, even if we put 100% effort into the acquiring of any sort of guarantees. For example, with joining NATO, one of the media talking points has been against it by some people, has been literally just the logistics of arriving in Finland. Of course, it's very difficult when 1/3 of the country is basically a swamp. The Finnish language has as many words for swamp as Eskimos for snow.
Yeah. Well, we also had the incident of Trump wanting to buy Greenland, which gave our politicians a very good excuse to like stand up to the evil orange man.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was
And
fun
that-
times, yeah.
Yeah, that took a lot of media attention. Of how
Did you-
our,
the real
our
question is,
strong
though, did
prime
you end up-
minister would, huh?
The real question is, did you end up paying your NATO debts?
Yeah, well, let's not get into that. Yeah, but yeah, there was a whole lot of, our strong leader is telling this guy off. Who do you think he is? And it's like, I mean, relax. He's not gonna buy Greenland. Come on.
No, he's very it's very convenient to build narratives around Trump. Just to follow up on the point with the Norwegian media continuing to talk probably more about Trump than Biden. What I'm reading out of this is that they're going for this narrative where they kind of know that Biden is shit. They don't want to cover him the least amount as possible, but they're sort of mentioning that his low approval ratings and some gaffes and so on. So they're now building up this kind of narrative where, Trump is going around in the Republican Party and he's cleaning out all opposition and he's changing the laws, and illegally, of course, it's all illegal. It's all bad. And, he's just going to do a coup again, just like with the January 6th stuff, which they write about a lot, actually. And, it's a way that they're going to explain if Biden loses, that he's just been building up this kind of army or whatever of evil Republicans and shutting people out of the party. So when he wins again, that's how they're going to explain it. I don't know if you have the same perception, Walrus.
Well, I agree with the, I've seen the same articles and the same takes. But I've pretty much just stopped reading, any sort of Norwegian media takes on Trump because they're never going to be favorable. But the reason I brought up the cathedral was pretty much because during sort of the election of I guess late 2019 would be correct. No. It would be 2020, sorry. I was working with a guy who was, I joked about this like Evening Post reader, midwit guy, where you can almost like, what he's going to say before he he opens his mouth, and this guy was like, he had Trump derangement syndrome. Like every day at lunch, it was, you know, an update on what Trump did today, and he's gonna destroy Western civilization basically, and it was insane, and it was like looking at a guy, you know, getting his software updated. Like he was just on point with everything they were saying. Like they were telling him, and without any sort of conspiracy, and that's the craziest part. Like no one decided. There's no decree from anywhere that, you know, this guy's opinions are going to be X, Y, and Z. But, you know, every day without fail, that was his opinions.
So I was thinking about the same thing as well with the cathedral model. And in like these fairs that we are, there's been a lot of emphasis on elite theory lately, and a little bit of mocking of the kind of emergent phenomena. But in terms of the media bias that appears, especially in Norway, it's I think that the emergent phenomena is a bit stronger of an explanation than the elite theory. I mean, from the elite theory perspective, you have BlackRock and a lot of these investors who can nudge the company from up top, but they don't really have large stakes in these companies. They'll have like maybe 4%, 2% stakes, and I think it's more likely that the entire journalist class has just become hegemonic. I did send you an article about it. I don't know if you
Yeah, I read it,
if you have
and to
it.
me, that's, you know, that's a prime example of cathedralism. Really,
Yes.
there's no direction in terms of, like, there's no, of course, no one's getting their orders from anywhere, but every journalist knows what he can. Like every journalist knows deep down, right, what he can and cannot write about.
Yes, and I think
From his editorial boss, right, or
I
his
think
editor.
they self-correct as well. Like they will
Yeah,
police
so
each other.
that's what you end up self-correcting, and then it hits the teachers, and then the teachers teach the correct thing to the kids, right? Because they're not going to tell you that the state might not be actually good if they're paid by the state, etc., etc. So you have this whole apparatus that is self-perpetuating.
Yes.
I think also it's the especially here you have this the effect of being satraps of the empire on the periphery. The further away that you are from the imperial core, the higher you must scream out your loyalty so the core can hear and see that you are loyal.
That's a good point. Yes, you have to, like, when you virtue signal, you have to virtue signal hard enough to show your allegiance.
Yeah, I think the one of the functions of how this discipline on these issues is upheld, especially in Finland, is this: there's this organization called the Council of the Public Word, which is basically a voluntary organization to which all of the MSM media conglomerates sign up to, where it's basically an organization where if any journalist steps even slightly out of line, they can be punished by the combined forces of the entire national media.
Right.
It's a lot of people often mistake it for being a government body itself, and often complain to it, but they literally just ignore every complaint about the media, even though that's ostensibly one of their the things mentioned in their charter, you know, taking complaints from the public. And there was a big scandal when not the current chairman of this council, but the previous one was the former editor of the Green Party mouthpiece paper. And obviously that sounds not very, you know, it's ostensibly not affiliated with anyone and completely neutral. So it's pretty overt. And now these pictures, by the way, talking about the Trump effect, this was from the Trump-Putin summit in Helsinki in 2018. you may remember Trump getting a football from Putin.
Yes, yeah.
And Helsingin Sanomat, the Helsinki Times, from the biggest conglomerate Sanoma, had this ad campaign before and during the visit of, welcome to the land of the free press. The first thought came in.
It's a bit interesting to me because I pulled it up again because we were talking about, the being on the edge of the empire, so to speak. And I don't know, there's probably some history nerds somewhere who can tell me about, like, imagine if you're like, I don't know, if you're on the edge of the empire here, and basically the emperor, in like spirit, I know that, the president of the United States isn't anywhere near an emperor figure, but let's just say that the leader of the empire, the president of the United States, is coming to your town, right? And you decide to flag for his enemy, basically.
Well,
as hard as you can.
It's more like an emperor that has recently usurped the throne, but
Or
the
something,
state
yeah.
apparatus is still behind.
Yeah.
So and they realize the usurper emperor is not very secure in his position. So they're playing to the established power base that, look how loyal of a satrapy we are.
Yes.
We're ostensibly welcoming him and being this neutral figure in between two worlds. But it's not really that. And of course, a media culture that has, for 80 years, well, of course, 50 years, been under the direct control of the Kremlin, doesn't exactly just one day change and not take orders from somewhere.
Yeah.
And then you're calling yourself the land of the free press. I think this was because there was some study by, some organization, some journalist organization, international one, that probably takes funding from Tony Blair, that where the freest media is, so where the most paused media is, and Finland came up number one. So this is why Helsingin Sanomat decided to run this ad campaign.
What is the definition for the freest media or the freest press?
The most press freedom, the best press freedom, I think, was the category. And
okay, like in terms of law, that must be it, right?
Yeah, protection.
Yeah.
The general atmosphere, I think. But of course, this is from, spreading the evangelism of liberal democracy. So.
I mean, yeah, you're free to you're free to keep doing what you're doing because it benefits
the
us.
most free NGOs in the world. Yes.
Yeah.
So who evaluates that?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think it's literally just the most free NGO activity in the world, and it literally is true. And NGOs from both sides. I mean, from Russia as well. So.
It's like a battleground for the.
It is.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I was looking, recently at The Economist, and they have the, the democracy index. It's a bit of the same thing, just like the press freedom index, where I think Norway came really high on it. Like the Scandinavian countries are very high, and I mean, I don't exactly know what metrics they're using, but I do suspect it is like just a measurement of how easy it is for NGOs to kind of swoop in there and exert influence.
But
yeah, or they do something that's like totally like it doesn't really matter, like how easy is it to vote or something like that. Like something that but that doesn't really tell you how good it is to live here,
or how easy it is to set up a new newspaper or something.
It's something like that, right? Yeah. I think I cut someone off. Sorry.
No,
Okay.
I was just making a comment. It's dead now. It's cool.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want to talk about another note I had was how paused the media is today compared to 10 years ago? That might be a bit hard to quantify. If not, we can see if we can take some questions from chat.
In Finland, at least, it's pretty easy to quantify. The third picture you showed just there was the Helsingin Sanomat front page in 2018, a few months before the elections. But it was Pride Month, and they of course put the rainbow flag with all the corporate partners on the front page, and that was of course 2018, as opposed to 2012 when they had a full page advert from the leader of the Nationalist Party talking about restricting immigration. So I think
that's a shift. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, they have always been progressive, but back then they at least, took money when money's good and put up the Nationalist Party's ad. But that leader eventually, they were in government when the 2015 migrant wave came, and he cucked completely, and the whole party split. But the split that he led, that let the refugees in, died immediately, and the old party took a couple of years, but it's now consolidated back to the original side, but obviously was pushed out of government. So
yes. I think, Ludwig, do you have any comments on
Yeah,
the change
I
in
actually
Norway?
have a sort of take, and it's not based on any hard data. I just went on the Wayback Machine, and I looked at some news, like from these tabloid newspapers in 2012, 2011. And of course, it hasn't gotten any less paused. It seems to be just as much global homo, but the emphasis has changed now. It's sort of an interesting point that I wanted to remark on it and see if anybody here has noticed a similar thing. But with a lot of these like 2012 and 2013 newspapers, I'm going to sound like that. So this sort of like an HR department representative here, but the amount of like brown and black faces that are on the front pages, it seems to be a lot more common. The narrative they were going with was multicultural Norway, like multicultural Oslo, where you're just going to bring in people from India and Pakistan and Somalia, and they're just going to live there and coexist with liberal Norwegians. So they have all these things like, oh, here's the National Turban Day where you can go get your turban taken and you can go eat the kebab here. Got all this food.
Is that a thing in Oslo?
Yeah. I mean, if you can just bring it back a little bit, can you go on like the Schibsted website? Maybe I'll link it to you in the.
Put it in the private chat, and
Yeah,
I'll
put it in
open it up.
the private chat there. See if I can find. Let's see. Here it comes.
Let's see here. Okay, I'm opening this. Share screen. Empowering people. What does it say in there?
So if you scroll down there, they have an article about their new diversity officer. Who's this guy in turban? I think you'll.
Oh, there it is. Meet our head of diversity.
Head of diversity.
I mean, it couldn't have been a white guy, right? So
he's white passing, I think, without the turban.
Well, that's because
he probably would be. He looks a bit tanned. That's it,
Yeah.
Well, don't you know that like white people aren't diverse?
Yes, that's the thing.
Oh yeah, that's of course.
But that's also it's an old point, and it feels counter jihadi, but it annoys me all the same. It's this guy has to be like not white, but he has to be like white passing enough that we can sell him, basically. And it's just like I fucking hate the corporatism of all of this. Like, it's the corporate art style. It's the you'll own nothing and you'll be happy, and we'll just be this gray blob of consumers. Fuck that.
And the sub headline there is also very telling: a passion that became a job.
My passion is being. Wait, what?
Yeah, you see the sub headline there.
Oh yeah.
That's the big thing that I have been going for a long time, really.
But he's one of the founders behind Norwegian Turban Day.
Yes. so that's why I like wanted to bring this guy in. Like his name is Samit Patpatia, and in 2012 he was like the star of a 6-part documentary that's called Seek in Love. So it's like a wordplay on sick in love.
Lovesick. Yeah.
Love sick, or something. Yeah, and it's really about him trying to find a wife in
Right.
Oslo, or like traveling around in Oslo, in Europe, to try to find a wife. And so they are dealing with the perspective of like a traditional Sikh family that came to Oslo to
Mhm.
start like a
Yeah, I'll
clothing
say
store.
the Sikh immigration has been a big problem for Norway,
Wait,
and I'm being
So-
ironic. It's not
so you
like the Sikhs are not the problem. Sorry.
No.
well, okay? Can I just? Did I hear you say you have a Turban Day in
Yeah,
Norway?
that's what was sort of his initiative there. That they do this in Oslo. They do it in the documentary where you can go just they'll put a turban on your head for free, and
Oh.
it's of course it's not something that I don't think anybody talks about it now.
No.
But they made it a part of the calendar. And I feel like that's a part of the agenda, like the 2012, 2013 agenda, that they had to bring in a lot of more these black darlings, or these brown darlings in media. Like you had Stella, who won the Eurovision in Norway, who's like
Right.
this Caribbean black woman, and she had time there. And you had the people who win like the Norwegian version of American Idol. Obama got a lot of time in the media, so they really pushed hard to expand the kind of artificial social sphere of the regular Norwegian person, to have like these brown people, or at least kind of more ethnic people in there. And that's something that you just don't see anymore. There, the agenda
Yeah,
now is
if you live outside of Oslo, depending on where you live, of course, but it's if you live outside of a city, like you can easily have like all your friends, everyone you know, Norwegian whites.
Right.
yes.
You know, it's not. This isn't the quote unquote average Norwegian's experience.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of the same here. Like practically all of the immigrants live in Copenhagen or Aarhus, or like the bigger cities. Like if you go out into the smaller towns, like there's nothing like that. But yeah, sounds like you got a Turban Day and we got a burqa band. So maybe we're
Well,
heading in
Seems about right.
but
Just-
what I've seen, the change that has been in the agenda is that, I don't know if you agree, Walrus, the current thing they're pushing for now is transgenderism and more environmental stuff. Did he fall out?
Yeah, he fell
Yeah.
out.
I'll
But yeah,
just keep.
it's the same here. I mean, this Fresh Prince agenda, it's just gone. Now it's the, as you say, the transgenderism, the environmentalism, and trying to slow walk into the.
About that.
He's back.
Back.
And trying to slow walk the Sweden Democratic agenda of get all the brown people out, and try to sit on and handbrake that agenda as hard as they can, while still not being saying that there is no problem, as they did like 4 years ago, because then there was no problem. Insistently, there is no problem, and then the problem started showing up in the places where the journalists lived, and then well, then it wasn't so fun anymore.
I think a big part of pushing all these agendas right up about these times is that they come at a time when in Finland a big part of what the girl power government was elected on through media hysteria, and a newspaper you just saw from Helsingin Sanomat with the pride flag was changing the trans laws, because the current Finnish trans law still states that there's the 5-year waiting period, and a mandatory castration or infertility rendition for official transitioning. And changing this law was a big part of the current government's program, but they never got to it because Corona happened, and the new technocratic, all these green initiatives are being pushed, and everybody's forgotten about it. So That's something.
I think you got lucky there because they succeeded in Norway. They got through all of these changes that they wanted to do in terms of like the regular law framework and putting in a lot of these. I mean, it is just to enable more of this trans stuff. And
you have to remember that, 2012, 2013 in Norway, that's after the terror attacks by the shooter guy. I'm blanking on his name.
Breivik.
Yes. Yeah. So any sort of right-wing resistance to any of this was very difficult.
Yes.
In terms of like actual like politics. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but I'm just saying that for anyone who was in the landscape at the time, you couldn't touch any of that with a 10-foot pole.
But I suspect with this kind of multiculturalism agenda they were running in 2012, that there's too many like dialectical weaknesses in that agenda, especially because you have to acknowledge a lot of these traditional lifestyles that you have with the Sikhs, or so you have like someone from Iran or somebody coming in here, like if they're gonna live in Oslo and they're gonna be living in a traditional family structure and being not having sex before marriage and having maybe sort of patriarchal family structure, you kind of have to acknowledge that in that multicultural frame. You have to say that is the equivalent of the Norwegian liberal lifestyle. But they're not doing that anymore. They've, I think, they sort of realized the folly of that. The folly of that
constantly articles now about stopping honor killings in Oslo because there's interfamilial disputes going on between let's say patriarchal cultures. And so there's been a crackdown on that. Whether or not it's working, I don't know. But it's you're treating the symptom and not the cause there, really.
Yeah, they're doing the same thing here. There was a bit of a row a couple of months ago because someone had gotten hold of a lot of police statistics, because there are in the, let's say, the economically challenged areas of the large urban centers. There's a lot of people falling off balconies from high rises, and someone had managed to do an ethnic breakdown of it. And well, let's just say there wasn't a single native over a 5-year period who had fallen off a balcony and died.
Well, I suppose they just understand railings better. Is that it?
Yeah, probably. Well, no, I lied. There was one Swedish girl who did die that way, but well, I think her boyfriend live streamed it as he to his friends as he threw her off over the railing. So
Jesus,
police got him. Yeah, I think it was a Pakistani guy or something like that.
This is clearly too much Czech immigration with this defenestrating.
Yeah, it's the Czechs are a real problem.
Throwing people out of windows, balconies.
They're always drunk, scattering their pretzels all over the place. Terrible people.
Oof. All right, we're getting to 2.5 hours. Let's do some questions from the chat, and then we'll round off. I posted a thing earlier. I'll see if anyone has asked any questions there. Let's see. Janner says, "Have you ever said the N-word?" I don't know if he's asking all of us or me, but yes, I have, I guess. But I'm not going to say it on stream because I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
Come on.
Just a little.
You gotta get
I actually grew up on it.
Yeah, I'll do it when Spotify has my back, okay? Yeah.
I actually grew up on it because my grandfather he used that term.
My dad keeps saying it in that like counter jihad boomer way to annoy my sister because she's a cosmopolitan. So he's like, "Oh, it's just a word, right?"
Well,
it's very ineffective,
my mom
but it's
and
funny.
dad are the same. And my
it's funny.
grandmother.
Well, it's funny because with my grandfather, there was no like malicious intent. It was just the word he used, and he just used it so casually, and people around him would be shocked. But he's like, what's wrong?" So I kind of grew up on that.
I see that too, like with the older generations or some of the people that are not so in touch with the MSM. They will just use that word, and there's no malicious intent there. It's just like a matter of fact term.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like it's the way that modern liberals say people of color. It's just, but it's a stupid fight to take. I think it's unproductive. Like fighting about that word.
Yeah.
Like that's not going to get us anywhere.
Oh, it's going to get us somewhere, all right.
Well, it's going to get
publicly,
me in jail.
Maybe just in your private sphere, fight for it there.
Yeah. But it's one of those things, you can unban the word when we have retaken the institutions, right?
After the coup, that's the first law change.
Yeah, it needs to be state media first
Careful
broadcast.
about what you say here, guys. Have you seen the NRK, the National Broadcasting Program Urix? Oh, that's many years ago.
No.
I don't know, Ludwig, do you have any?
It's been a while since I've seen it. I think that falls into the same, like this kind of multicultural Oslo bucket. They're really just trying to normalize, or like the tea time, and they're trying to make you like immigrants, especially like ethnic non-Western immigrants. But I mean, like I said previously, they have gone away from it, and I do suspect it's because the elites, like the system, is not able to make these ethnic people cooperate with them, and we're seeing that like with the illness and the cure.
Yeah, that's been a big thing.
Yeah. So they're quite overrepresented in refusing to take the cure for the illness. And that's one of the things, like they just can't get him to go along with Globo Homo in the way that I suspected they thought. So now it's just a liability for them.
Yeah. Nordanon says they're going to add a third legal gender in Norway, right? I thought I saw some clip about it last week. I've been reading about it. I don't know if it's been decided yet or if it's still in like... there was something about there's investigations into adding it. I think that's where we're at.
It's going to happen. That's it's just going to happen.
It's a question.
They're having the debate. they're having the
like
liberal debate.
The woman who's doing the investigation is like ostensibly against it, but she's also the one who has spearheaded like doing what do they call it these days? I want to say, I don't want to get banned, so I'm going to call it corrective surgery. She's been spearheading that, I think. So it's, we're back to you can have the priest who is for gay marriage, or you can have the priest who is for gay priests.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many law changes in Norway. These things that they've done that is actually quite unpopular democratically, but they've just been pushing it through with bipartisan support. Yeah. So I don't expect there's no breaks. There's nobody in there who's saying we shouldn't do this. There's no Jordan Peterson or anything like that. That has any like, okay, what grounding do we have to not do this, considering everything else that we've done so far? I don't see, it's just going to happen.
Nordanon again says Breivik is the biggest saboteur for the real right in this country. I agree.
Yep.
There's some other chats here.
Recently have some hearing, and he was immediately
something about getting a reduced sentence, but obviously that didn't go through.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're never gonna let him out.
No.
No matter what the law says that they have to. I mean, they're gonna rewrite the laws just to keep him locked up until he dies.
I mean, not that it would do me any good that he was out. Well, it's...
No, he's like Ben Shapiro, a net negative.
Yeah, I think it's a net negative. It's not worth it. It's not, as Nordanon said, it's the biggest blow to any sort of true right-wing movement here in Norway, because it's all going to be pointed back to him.
Yeah, and it's not just like one murder either. It's there was a pretty substantial body count.
Yeah.
So I mean, like they're doing
It's
now,
hard to find.
January.
It's hard to find
yeah.
anyone in Norway who wasn't like touched by it in some way. Like either you knew someone, or they're in your family, or they're like a cousin or something like that. So it's a very universal event too.
Yep.
Let's see here. Any new chats? Probably not. Thoughts, reflections on Megropolis. Intro tune is undeniably catchy. It is. The intro tune is very catchy. I don't know if I have any thoughts or reflections on it. In terms of like, for those of you who don't know, Megropolis was is I don't know if it's still going. It was a program running on the national broadcasting, which was immigration centered, as in it was reporting on like people who have immigrated to Norway and how they live, and like cultural stuff for them. So it was like we have like every day there's like half an hour of Sami content. Well, then there was like an hour of Sikh or Islamic content on the TV. That's basically it.
At least you don't have a state broadcaster channel that is devoted to. Well, the name of the channel is Ulefem, so you can immediately see that it's for the Swedish and Sami minority specifically, the whole channel.
Right.
So.
No, we don't have that.
We have a similar one, but it's just it's for all the Finnish immigrants that we have.
It's an entire channel.
No, it's they broadcast the Finnish state actors, radio and
like
TV,
okay,
into our networks, so all the Finns can. I don't know what they do.
Yes. Well, it was a very like positive show. Like it had the intro to this stream was for a show called Norge Rundt, which is a highlight show. It's called the show for the districts, meaning that it was a show about they'd go out into the middle of nowhere and they'll show like, oh, this guy has got a weird hobby and this is how they live here, and etc. etc. And basically Megropolis is the same thing, except it's like, oh, this guy's living here and he immigrated from here and here, and here's some wacky adventures from his daily life, right? Things like that. And Vingel is saying that from the Wikipedia page, it's the goal was to spotlight the positive and negative side of the internationalization of Norway. But you can question about the negative sides. I don't think I ever saw that.
Nope.
What do you call native?
There is no negative sides.
There's plenty of negative sides.
Diversity is
when
our
they
strength,
walk around
yes.
with this person, there's probably a lot of reactions on the street. Looking the wrong way at him. Those are very negative.
Oh, yes.
What do you call native Norwegians, Swedes, and Finns? Immigrants in Denmark call us kartoffeldanske, potato Dane. Yeah, potato is a slur, I guess, towards Norwegians from immigrants, but I don't think it sticks.
Well, it's a big thing here. They call us potatoes.
Yeah, it's either the potato or the fish bowl. It's not the bowls, but like these fiskebowl. The canned.
Yeah, I don't know what it's called.
Let's see if we can find it. Of course, it never sticks. I mean, I would be surprised if anybody's ever been insulted by that.
Yeah, I don't think. Yeah, no, That would be very silly to be offended by that. Okay. He's responding to Vingle from something, saying, considering how mental you go with VAT and various other import tariffs and taxes, it boggles the mind that you've gone for 100% free trade on American culture. That's true, but we didn't really have any choice in the matter. When it comes to cultural imports, it's something that's been done to us, unfortunately.
Well, in Finland's case, it wasn't done to us. The overt oppressor was the influence of the overt oppressor was played down by willingly embracing the American. The main two youth movements in the 70s were punks and the basically 50s aesthetic LARPers from America, and so that's completely voluntary, and it was embraced as a rejection of the Great Soviet.
Right.
So dialectics all the way down.
You gotta own the Reds by adopting the pause.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that was kind of the the Berlin Wall, East meets West, Berlin sort of thing. You lure them in with McDonald's and jazz music, I guess, and everything else just flows from there, man. You can't stop it.
Yeah, but I think it's also a very liberal thing to do. I mean, in this country, the globalist liberals quite literally opened the borders for mass immigration just to own the quote unquote racists.
That's the funniest thing ever.
Yeah,
But I'm sorry,
I mean,
we're never gonna let you live that down. You
no, but
pissed
it's
away
fucking
your
true.
entire fortune just to virtue signal to the rest of Europe who doesn't give a shit about you.
Yeah. No. I mean, it was fucking insane because they have actually in interviews they have all these old now retired and defunct politicians that presided over that entire 2014 2016 debacle or whatever you should call it. They have essentially gone out and said that if the Sweden Democrats hadn't gotten into the parliament a couple of years earlier and started to growing in the opinion polls, well, then we would never have done this. So we're like, what are you talking about? And there's racists.
There's also a thing
It's
I've
fucking insane.
observed from about Sweden from the Finnish eye has always been this moral superpower thing where before the immigration you were funding the ANC in South Africa and boasting about how your state redistributes more of its GDP than the Soviet Union and all this to the people.
Yeah, that's the our little local boomer truth regime. We had to do something because we had been on the German side in 2 world wars at this point, so we needed a rebranding. Then the small part that came in with the boomers was that they grew up on that state propaganda because everyone of the older generations before the boomers knew that this was propaganda. The problem was that the boomers then drunk that Kool-Aid and never really realized what it was, and they thought it was true. And here we are.
Yes, but I honestly think it's the culture is changing from that because people don't watch the state broadcaster anymore because of the internet. And although that means a lot of kids these days wind up watching even influenced by even more pause stuff straight from the source across the ocean, but it also means that there is a big influence of internet subculture And I think Finland with Spurdo and Apu and all this punches above its weight in memetic warfare.
Yeah, that's probably
Yes.
true.
Ylilauta is basically Finnish 4chan, and it's striking how common things said there, and I find out about it way later in actual 4chan or repeated by some American. It's quite astounding, honestly.
Because the Finns and the Australians have always been very subversive online creatures. Did you know that Schibsted published August Strindberg, who wrote a catechet for Underklassen? Yes. I would like to do a stream on Strindberg one time, because I did touch on him when I did my Hamsun stream. And he's certainly a character. And we can talk about net positives. I think that's certainly going to be a discussion when it comes to Strindberg. Because he is very much an artist that goes wherever his passion takes him, so to speak. And that's led to quite a few strange conclusions. Sorry.
I just said that he had a lot of passions.
Yes.
I
yes, a lot of different passions.
Buy his entire collected works, and it's like 3 meters worth of books in my bookshelves.
Jesus. And he runs the gamut of like Marxism and reactionary books, and like he touches on like everything somehow.
Yeah, you can't really pin him down. I mean, a lot of people in that era, both in all of the Scandinavian scenes, or what do you want to say, of the 1800s, you run into these kind of people that they embody all the positions at once somehow and gets away with it.
Yeah, it's strange. I think it's because the availability of idea, or sort of the openness of ideas in a strange way, was like the playing field was larger, because the 19th century ideologies hadn't fully set in yet, so there's a lot more exploration going on.
Free floating separate ideas rather than a doctrine. The doctrine wasn't fully formalized yet, so a lot of things could be put together still, because there wasn't an orthodoxy, and the orthodoxy really comes in essentially after somewhere during the Weimar era. Then it starts to cement, and then it really goes into the iron form of the Boomer Truth regime that comes in the late 40s and beginning of the 1950s.
Yes. So he was certainly a strange person. In a weird way, like I don't understand it, because I've read some of it, and he manages to occupy this like weird Nietzschean Übermensch. I almost want to invoke Bronze Age pervert stance, while at the same time being a communist reactionary and like beating his wife or something. It's like,
and his many lovers. He loved women, but then he also hated how weak they were. And he wanted them to submit to him, but he also hated that they submitted to him, because he couldn't stand the weakness. So
and then he goes off and writes a play about that because he's sad. And
like, okay. Well, Strindberg, that was more of Strindberg's default setting. Sad. Like everyone else.
Oh yeah, Yander says it, that he was a Nietzschean Marxist. He hated the weakness of women who would submit to him. Yeah. If beating women was a sport, oh God. Okay, have you heard the Nation of Immigrants narrative import? I don't think that's... Is that an import into any of our countries? I don't think so.
No.
There's There's nothing here about that.
I don't recognize
What would that
at all.
argument even be?
Well, that our countries are nations of immigrants.
Well,
we're not.
Sami
No,
were here
but they'll
before
say
us.
it anyway.
No, it is true in one way. We are nations of immigrants that, well, follow the receding ice.
Yeah, okay. Well, but then in the same vein, all of Africa is a nation of immigrants.
Yeah.
Like
Yes,
from like the Egypt area.
Every people group that is alive today has genocided others in history.
Yeah, you
So
immigrated
in
upon
that sense, everyone is immigrants. Sure.
Yeah.
You settled upon Neanderthal land.
Yes.
You bigot.
There is, a lot of the archaeological findings that have been found, because Finnish swamps are, they preserve under them. The swamp itself, of course,
Yeah,
corrodes.
the peat bogs.
Yeah, the peat bogs, the bogs themselves corrode the remains, but under them is very well preserved the remains. And basically, one finding that has been found, I don't exactly remember where it was, but somewhere northwest, I think. It was basically some sort of battlefield where they found a huge number of very short bodies and a tiny number of fallen, taller ones. And they were basically theorizing, could these be some sort of Nordic pygmies that were genocided by our ancestors?
What?
In Africa, there's these pygmy tribes that have
Yeah,
survived,
no.
but in these previously, these
Finnish pygmies.
whatever wound up as elves and all these in mythology. Could these be these people?
It's the Aryans, yeah.
Well, don't be Neanderphobes.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it's a fun thing. The funniest thing I think about the Scandinavian peat bogs is still when they find what would that be in English? Myrsmör, bog butter, because people because they realized things are preservative. People from during the Stone Age and Bronze Age used to dump these large caches of butter in the bogs. And some of them, of course, got lost, so they can find this, and it's like 5,000-year-old butter, and it's still edible.
Nice.
Sweet.
Forbidden butter.
It's really the forbidden butter.
All right. On that note, I think it's time to
We're coming
end
up on
it
3
on a
hours.
high note. Let's see, anything. Have you forgotten the somewhat distorted Vikings for Vikings study story from last year? Well, yeah, but that's just silliness. Like, nobody believes that. Like, actually.
That was literally just the journalists. They made the facial reconstruction and just took the coloration bar and slided it dark and nothing else. The bone structure and everything was still the same.
Yeah, it's nothing that's getting any traction here. That's for sure.
No.
Okay.
Same here. Whenever they try to do that kind of thing, people just get really pissed.
Yes.
Yeah, no wonder.
Well, thank you all for joining me. I think hopefully we have all learned something today. It might be a bit general, but it's one of those streams that's nice to have as context for later talks, I think. If anyone ever comes on again, to talk about something related to the media, we can always point back to this one if anyone has any questions. So, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for
Any
having us.
last comments before we leave?
Hakkaa päälle.
He can probably get away with saying whatever he likes because I don't understand Finnish.
Esa peitte.
I only learned the swear words. All right. Thanks for watching, and I'll probably see you all again in 2 weeks. Those of you watching, I mean. In the notes in the description for this video, we have linked the Matrix room or the Telegram channel. That's pretty much just a mirror of my Twitter. It's also my Twitter directly if you want to follow me there. But the Matrix room for the Longhouse is a fun place to hang out. We're posting some funny memes. You don't have to be a Nordic or a Scandinavian to hang out there. Although some of the memes are very oriented around ribbing each other for being of the wrong nationality. So you might have to live with that. Okay. Thank you all. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.